All right, let's dive right into this explainer. Today, we're breaking down a really fascinating devotional by Pastor Hu Ziqiang, and we're looking at how some ancient biblical texts actually offer a totally radical and honestly highly practical solution to our modern hustle culture. I mean, if you've ever felt completely exhausted by the daily grind, the concepts we're about to unpack here are going to offer a major perspective shift. We really have to ask ourselves, is this famous mandate to seek first the kingdom just, an empty religious slogan? Or is there actually a practical, day-to-day framework hidden inside of it? The pastor argues pretty strongly that unless we define this mandate through the lens of our actual, messy daily lives, well, it just remains a catchy phrase. So, to unpack this, we're going to hit 5 key areas today. Number 1, the root of anxiety and its antidote. 2, defining what God's kingdom actually is. 3, understanding God's righteousness. 4, living out the Spirit's fruit. And finally, number 5, a total reimagining of heaven. Let's start right in with section 1, the root of anxiety and the antidote. The pastor pinpoints a universal human problem here, which is our exhausting pursuit of material gain. He calls this the addition lifestyle. And let's be real, this is basically our default human mode, right? We are constantly demanding a higher salary, more fun, more stuff. But the devotional contrasts this heavily with a spiritual focus. This shifts our attention completely away from those worldly cravings and points it toward God's will. And the pastor notes something absolutely crucial. When our minds aren't focused on God, we end up just as anxious as the rest of the world. Now, what's super fascinating about this famous verse from Matthew chapter 6, seek first the kingdom, is that Jesus actually isn't telling us to just ignore our physical needs. He's not saying, hey, you don't need food or clothes. Instead, it's about fundamentally rewiring our priorities to cure that deep-seated anxiety. It's all about letting go of that worldly panic and genuinely trusting that if we focus on the eternal stuff first, those physical necessities are going to be taken care of. The source emphasizes that the ultimate antidote to this whole anxiety epidemic we're facing is, simply put, contentment. But how do you actually achieve that? Well, by bringing literally everything to God in prayer, exactly like it says in Philippians 4:6. It's a conscious, deliberate choice to swap out your worry for gratitude and trust. That brings us to section 2. What exactly is God's kingdom? Spoiler alert, it's probably not what you think. Rather than just picturing some golden castle up in the clouds waiting for us after we die, the source defines the kingdom as God's present, active authority. We're talking about his sovereignty over our greed, our random desires, and our current mindset, like right now, today. When you actively choose to let God rule your inner thoughts instead of letting your own ambition take the driver's seat, guess what? You're in the kingdom. And yielding to this sovereignty means letting God rule your decisions literally everywhere. Whether you're wrangling your family at home, dealing with massive stress at the office, sitting in church, picking up groceries at the market, or even mid-rep at the gym, the kingdom isn't just boxed into Sunday mornings, it's the actual framework for your chaotic Tuesday afternoon commute. Moving right along to section 3, what is God's righteousness? So if the kingdom is God's rule, what does his righteousness actually look like? Well, the source material points out that seeking righteousness isn't just sitting around having a nice heavenly hope for the future. No, it requires us to actively manifest truth, justice, and holy living right here, right now, in this physical era. We definitely don't get a free pass to ignore the real world just because our ultimate hope is in heaven. In fact, the pastor highlights a really interesting historical trap here, this ancient Greek dualistic philosophy. Basically, it's the idea that the spirit is inherently good and the physical body just doesn't matter at all. And that is a super dangerous mindset. Why? Because it tricks people into thinking that their physical indulgences don't impact their spiritual lives. This dualism usually pushes people to one of 2 extreme edges, either unchecked, crazy sensual living, or this overly strict, punishing asceticism. And neither of those is God's intended design for righteousness. Which naturally leads us to section 4, living out the Spirit's fruit. So, instead of falling into that dualistic trap we just talked about, true faith requires total integration. The source cites Galatians chapter 5 to explain that pursuing God's kingdom and righteousness looks exactly like letting the Holy Spirit produce 9 very tangible traits in us. We're talking about love, joy, peace, patience, kindness, goodness, faithfulness, gentleness, and self-control. Guys, this isn't just some abstract theology lesson. This is the practical, everyday metric for how we treat God, how we treat ourselves, and how we treat other people in the modern world. And finally, section 5, heaven beyond imagination. So, having locked in how we should be living right now, Pastor Hugh challenges us to look forward to the future. But he says we need to drop our worldly metrics of luxury. We really shouldn't be limiting heaven to our earthly ideas of a good time, like eating a perfectly cooked steak or having the absolute best Japanese food. Furthermore, if you're interpreting the book of Revelation's streets of gold or pearl gates as just literal architecture, well, you're kind of missing the point. To the ancient writer John, those were simply the best ultimate symbols he had available to describe absolutely unimaginable beauty. To help us wrap our heads around this, the pastor uses a pretty brilliant modern analogy. Think about the overwhelming sense of awe you felt when you traveled to an incredibly beautiful, totally foreign country for the very first time. Maybe it was your first trip to Japan or somewhere in Europe. That profound sense of wonder where your jaw just kind of drops and you're taking in sights you've never even dreamed of, that is just a tiny, microscopic glimpse of what heaven will be like. Or here's another one. Imagine the sheer wonder, the literal wows escaping your lips when you step into a cutting-edge, mind-blowing tech expo. You're suddenly surrounded by these futuristic innovations you didn't even know were physically possible. It literally expands your brain. Heaven is a realm of beauty and creation that just completely blows past our current limited human capacity to understand. Ultimately, the source describes it as a realm of eternal rest and profound glory. It's a place entirely free from pain and sorrow, created by God specifically for the souls of his people. Honestly, it is a reality that makes our modern, everyday material obsessions look incredibly small by comparison. So, as we wrap up this explainer today, we're challenged to leave behind the exhausting anxiety of that addition lifestyle. We've seen that seeking the kingdom really just means letting God reign in our everyday routines and trusting him completely with our future, which leaves us with one vital and pretty provocative question to ponder today. Who or what is truly ruling your heart and mind right now?